I, 32F, stood near the towering five-tiered wedding cake, a monument of white frosting and sugar flowers. My husband, Mark, was across the room, laughing with his old college friends. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and champagne. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had repeated that phrase to myself all morning, a mantra against the nervous fluttering in my stomach. Everything looked perfect. The venue was a beautifully restored barn, with fairy lights strung from the rafters, casting a warm, golden glow on our guests. My dress felt like a cloud around my legs. I had found my person, and we were starting our forever. A small voice cut through the joyful noise. It was Lily, Mark's 6-year-old daughter and my new stepdaughter. She was our flower girl, and she looked like a tiny angel in her ivory dress, a crown of baby's breath in her blonde hair. She was talking to my Aunt Carol, her voice high and clear, carrying easily across the polished dance floor. "Daddy buys her everything," Lily announced, pointing a small, sticky finger directly at me. Aunt Carol chuckled, a nervous, polite sound. She probably thought it was just a cute, childish observation. But the words hit me like stones. They were not cute. They were sharp and coded in something ugly that a child should not understand. My smile felt frozen on my face. I looked down at my dress, a designer gown that I had saved for and purchased with my own money. I thought of the wedding itself, the costs of which we had split down the middle, a decision we made together to start our marriage as true partners. I saw Mark's ex-wife, Diana, standing near the gift table. She had a small, tight smile on her face as she watched the exchange. She met my eyes for a fleeting second, and her smile widened just a fraction before she turned away. In that tiny moment, I knew. Those were not Lily's words. They were Diana's. They were planted in that little girl's mind like poison seeds, designed to bloom at the moment they would cause the most pain. I felt a wave of cold wash over me, despite the warmth of the room. This perfect day was now stained. I excused myself from the conversation I was barely a part of and walked over to Mark. I needed him to see what I saw. I needed him to fix this. I touched his arm gently. "Mark, can I talk to you for a second?" I asked, keeping my voice low and steady. He turned, his face beaming. "Of course, my beautiful wife. Is everything okay?" He said, his voice loud with happiness. I led him to a small alcove near the entrance, away from the prying ears of our guests. My heart was pounding. I did not want to ruin the mood, but I could not let this go. "It's Lily," I started, trying to choose my words carefully. "She just told Aunt Carol that you buy me everything." Mark's smile faltered for a moment, then returned, a little more strained. "Oh, honey, she's 6. You know how kids are. They just say things," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "No, Mark. It was the way she said it. And Diana was watching. She was smiling." I insisted, my voice trembling slightly. "This feels deliberate. It feels like something Diana told her to say." He sighed, the happy groom disappearing, replaced by the tired peacekeeper I knew all too well. "Clara, please, let's not do this tonight. It's our wedding day. Can we just enjoy it? Don't let Diana get to you. That's what she wants," he said. "So you admit she's trying to get to me?" I countered, my frustration growing. "I'm not admitting anything," he said, his voice firm. "I'm just saying we should focus on us. On this. It's one little comment from a child. Please, for me, just let it go." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. He wanted peace. He always wanted peace, especially where Diana and Lily were concerned. And usually I gave in. I smoothed things over. I was the one who was flexible, the one who understood. But this was different. This was my wedding day, and I was being painted as a gold digger in front of my own family by his daughter, who was being used as a mouthpiece for his bitter ex-wife. I felt a profound sense of loneliness settle over me. I was his wife now, but I still felt like an outsider in the tight, complicated circle of his past. I took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Okay, Mark. For you, I'll let it go. For tonight. He smiled, relieved. He kissed my forehead and squeezed my hand. Thank you. Now come on, let's go cut that cake, he said, his good mood instantly restored. As he led me back to the reception, I felt a chasm opening between us. He thought he had solved the problem, but all he had done was show me how alone I was in it. The flower girl's words echoed in my head, no longer just a childish comment, but a warning. Daddy buys her everything. The her was supposed to be me, but as I watched Diana across the room, a chilling thought took root in my mind. What if the her was someone else entirely? What if this was about something much bigger than a wedding dress or a party? I decided right then, standing there in my beautiful gown, that I was done letting things go. I would find out what was really going on. The rest of the wedding passed in a blur. I smiled for photos, I danced the first dance. I laughed at the speeches. But underneath it all, a cold resolve was forming. The joy of the day had been replaced by a quiet, burning determination. Mark thought this was over. I knew it was just the beginning. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Hawaii, a trip I had meticulously planned and paid for as a surprise. As we boarded the plane, Mark was ecstatic, talking about snorkeling and luau's. I smiled and nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about bank statements and divorce decrees. I was thinking about the strange, tight smile on Diana's face. The trip was beautiful, with turquoise water and warm, sandy beaches. Mark was attentive and loving, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. He thought my quietness was just post-wedding bliss, a serene contentment. He had no idea it was the calm before a hurricane. Every time he would buy me a souvenir, a shell necklace, or a brightly colored sarong, he would say, "See? Daddy buys you everything." Turning Lily's words into a playful joke between us. Each time he said it, my stomach twisted. It was not a joke to me. It was a clue. He was trying to paper over the wound with humor, but he was only making it deeper. He was proving that he did not understand the real issue at all. He saw it as a misunderstanding about material things, about who paid for what. I was beginning to suspect it was not about that at all. It was about power, control, and a secret he was desperately trying to keep. One evening, we were having dinner at a restaurant overlooking the ocean. The sunset was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was breathtakingly romantic. "Are you happy, Clara?" Mark asked, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I am," I said. And it was mostly true. I was happy with him, in this bubble, away from everything. But I knew the bubble would burst the moment we landed back home. "I have a question for you, though, and I want you to be honest with me." He looked wary. "Okay," he said slowly. "The money you give to Diana," I began, treading carefully. "Is it just child support, or is there something else?" His hand tightened on mine. "We talked about this. It's for Lily, to make sure she has a comfortable life. Diana, she's not great with money. I just make sure there's enough to cover everything so Lily never goes without." "But the amount seems like a lot." I pressed gently. "I'm your wife now, Mark. Our finances are joined. I think I have a right to understand where our money is going." I used the word "our" deliberately. He pulled his hand back and leaned back in his chair. The warm, romantic mood was gone, replaced by a familiar tension. "It's from my business account, Clara. It's money I earned long before we even met. It doesn't affect our joint finances. I've made sure of that." "So it's your money, not our money?" I asked, my voice quiet. "When it comes to this, yes," he said firmly. "It's a pre-existing arrangement. It's my responsibility. Please, don't make this an issue." I felt that same cold loneliness from our wedding night creep back in. He was drawing lines, building walls around a part of his life that he was not willing to share. He was my husband, but he was still keeping me at a distance. I decided to drop it for the rest of the trip. There was no point in ruining our last few days in paradise, but I knew exactly what my first step would be when we got home. I was going to find out the exact nature of this pre-existing arrangement. I needed to see the numbers. I needed to see the truth in black and white because I was no longer getting it from the man I married. When we returned, the house felt different. It was our home, the one we had chosen together, but now it felt like it held secrets. Mark went back to work, and the routine of normal life began. Lily came over for the weekend, and I tried my best to connect with her. I suggested we bake cookies, her favorite activity. "Mommy uses a special recipe," she said, her little nose wrinkled in skepticism as I pulled out the flour and sugar. "That's nice," I said cheerfully. "We can try my special recipe today. Maybe you'll like it too." She reluctantly agreed. As we mixed the dough, she was quiet. Then, out of the blue, she asked, "Did you like your wedding present from Daddy?" I was surprised. "Which one, sweetie? Daddy and I are a team now. We share everything." "The one he bought you with all his money," she said, parroting the words with an unnerving accuracy. "Mommy said he had to spend a lot to make you happy." I stopped stirring. I looked down at her innocent face and felt a surge of anger. Not at her, but at Diana. She was relentlessly programming her daughter with this narrative, painting me as a demanding, materialistic woman. "Lily," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "That's not true. Your daddy and I love each other very much. Love isn't about money or presents." She just shrugged. "Mommy says it is." I knew then that talking to Lily was pointless. The source of the problem was Diana, and the enabler was Mark. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I decided to approach Mark again, but from a different angle. "I think we should get Lily into some kind of family counseling," I said as we were cleaning up after dinner. Mark stiffened. "Why? She's a happy kid." "She's repeating things that Diana is telling her," I explained, trying to keep my voice calm. "She's being taught to see our relationship and me in a very negative light. It's affecting her. A neutral third party could help her process the divorce and our new family structure in a healthier way." "Absolutely not," he said, his voice sharp. "I'm not putting my daughter through that. She doesn't need a shrink. She just needs time to adjust. And you need to be less sensitive." "Less sensitive?" I asked, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "Mark, your ex-wife is using your daughter to insult me, and you're telling me to be less sensitive?" "You're blowing this out of proportion," he shot back. "It's just talk, Clara. Words. You need to be the bigger person here." "I have been the bigger person since the day I met you," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. I have bent over backwards to accommodate Diana's moods, her schedule, her endless demands. But this is a line I will not let her cross. She will not poison my relationship with my stepdaughter. And she will not do it in my own home. "It's Lily's home too," he yelled. "I know that, but I am your wife. Who is supposed to be your priority? Me or the woman you divorced years ago?" He just stared at me, his jaw tight. He did not have an answer. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. It was clear he would never stand up to Diana. If I wanted to change things, I would have to do it myself. My resolve hardened into something unbreakable. The time for talking was over. It was time for action. The next day, while Mark was at a day-long conference, I put my plan into motion. My first step was to understand the full financial picture. He had told me the payments to Diana came from his business account, an account he considered separate from our marital finances. I had a feeling he was wrong about that, legally speaking. But first, I needed access. I went into his home office, a room I had been avoiding since our argument. My heart was thumping in my chest. It felt like a betrayal to be snooping, but his refusal to be transparent had forced my hand. I was not looking for dirt. I was looking for the truth he refused to give me. I turned on his desktop computer. It was password protected, of course. I tried the usual things. Lily's birthday, his birthday, our anniversary. Nothing. Then I remembered something he had said once, a long time ago when we were first dating. He told me the name of his first dog, a golden retriever named Buddy. He had talked about that dog with such affection. On a whim, I typed in Buddy 3. The screen unlocked. A wave of relief and guilt washed over me. I felt like a detective in a cheap novel. I navigated to his bookkeeping software. It took me a few minutes to figure it out, but I found the ledgers for his business account. I scrolled back, month after month, year after year. There it was, a monthly transfer to Diana's account. The label was innocuous. Consulting fee. Not child support. Consulting fee. What was she consulting on? She was an art history major who had not worked a day since they were married. The amount was even more shocking than I had imagined. It was not just large, it was consistently a precise percentage of his monthly profit. It fluctuated, going up when he had a good month and down when he had a bad one, but the percentage remained the same. This was not child support. This was not a generous allowance. This was a cut. She was getting a piece of his business. I felt dizzy. I sat back in his expensive leather chair, the one I supposedly made him buy, and tried to process what I was seeing. This was not an arrangement to keep her quiet and happy. This was something else entirely. This was structured. It was deliberate. And it was hidden behind a false label. I took out my phone and took pictures of the screen. Page after page of transactions. I documented everything, my hands shaking slightly. I found the initial setup of the recurring payment, dated just a month after their divorce was finalized. The memo on that first payment was different. It just said, "As agreed." Agreed to what? The divorce decree had to be the key. Mark kept his important documents in a small safe in the closet of his office. I knew the combination. It was the date his company was founded. He was a man of predictable habits. My hands trembled as I turned the dial. Click, click, click. The heavy door swung open. Inside were files, passports, and some jewelry boxes. I found a thick manila envelope labeled Divorce Final. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. I pulled it out and sat on the floor, my back against the wall. I opened the clasp and pulled out the thick stack of papers. The legal language was dense and confusing, but I skimmed through looking for the financial sections. I found the part about child support. It was a standard, court-ordered amount. It was a fraction of what he was actually paying her. Then I found another section, titled Private Spousal Support Agreement. This was not part of the public court record. It was an addendum signed by both of them and notarized. It stipulated that Mark would pay Diana a percentage of his business profits monthly, for life or until she remarried. In exchange, Diana agreed to a comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement clause. She was forbidden from discussing Mark's business or personal life with anyone. She was violating that agreement every single day, through the mouth of their daughter. But that was not the most shocking part. The percentage she was getting was exorbitant. It was enough to ensure she could live a life of extreme luxury without ever working again. Why would Mark agree to this? He was a sharp businessman. He would never sign a deal this lopsided unless he was being forced to. The word from the wedding echoed in my mind again. Daddy buys her everything. The her was Diana. He was buying her silence. The price was a piece of his company for the rest of her life. And she, in turn, was using that money and power to systematically turn his own child against me, his new wife. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. Diana was not just a bitter ex-wife. She was a predator. And Mark was not a peacekeeper. He was a hostage. I put the documents back exactly as I had found them, locked the safe, and logged out of the computer. I sat in the silent office for a long time, the pieces clicking into place. The constant appeasement, the refusal to confront her, the immediate defensiveness whenever I brought up money. It was not about protecting Lily's feelings. It was about fear. Mark was afraid of Diana. He was afraid of what she would do if he stopped paying. My anger toward Mark softened slightly. replaced by a grim sense of pity. But it did not excuse him. He had chosen to keep me in the dark. He had allowed me to be collateral damage in his secret war with his ex-wife. He had made me the villain in a story where I was the only innocent party. My pity was quickly overwhelmed by a cold, hard resolve. I could not live like this. I would not live in a marriage built on secrets and fear. I had to get out, or I had to blow the whole thing up. I decided I was not the one who was going to run. I was the one who was going to fight. My first call was to my best friend, Sarah. I met her for coffee the next day at a small cafe far from our neighborhood. I needed a neutral space to unload everything. I told her the whole story, from the flower girl's comment to the discovery in the safe. When I finished, she just stared at me, her cup of latte forgotten in her hands. "Clara, this is insane," she finally said. "This is not just a messy divorce. This is blackmail." "I know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I think it is too. But why? What could she possibly have on him that is worth that much money?" "That's the million-dollar question," Sarah said, leaning forward. "Or in this case, the percentage of the business question. You can't stay in this situation. You have to do something." "I'm going to," I assured her. "I'm not going to let her win, but I need a plan. I can't just confront Mark with this. He'll shut down and deny everything. He's too scared of her." "You need a lawyer," Sarah said firmly. "Not just any lawyer. You need someone smart, someone who specializes in forensic accounting and complex divorces, someone who can tear this private agreement apart." She was right. This was beyond my ability to handle. I was dealing with something dark and complicated. I needed a professional. Sarah gave me the name of a lawyer her company had used for a corporate dispute. His name was Arthur Evans, and she said he was a shark, but a very calm and methodical one. I called Mr. Evans's office that afternoon and made an appointment for the following week. I used my personal credit card to pay the consultation fee. This was my battle, and I would fund it myself. For the next few days, I lived in a state of high alert. I was pleasant and calm with Mark, pretending that everything was back to normal. I played the part of the happy newlywed, but inside I was a coiled spring of anxiety and anger. Every interaction with him was now filtered through my new knowledge. When he talked about a stressful day at work, I wondered if it was because of a dip in profits, knowing Diana's payment would be smaller. When he was overly affectionate, I wondered if it was guilt. I felt like I was living with a stranger. Lily came over that weekend again. Diana dropped her off. Her car, a brand new luxury SUV that looked out of place on our quiet suburban street. She did not get out. She just honked the horn, and Lily ran out to the car. Diana gave me a cool, dismissive wave through the tinted window before speeding off. Later that day, Lily was playing with her dolls. I overheard her making them talk to each other. "You can't have this house," one doll said to the other. "This is my daddy's house. You're just visiting." My heart ached. This was not just about me anymore. This was about Lily. She was being taught to see the world through a lens of ownership and exclusion. She was being robbed of the chance to have a happy blended family. My meeting with Arthur Evans was in a sleek downtown office building. The space was minimalist and intimidating, all glass and steel. Mr. Evans himself was the opposite. He was an older gentleman with kind eyes and a reassuringly calm demeanor. He listened patiently as I laid out the entire story, from the wedding to the financial documents I had photographed. I felt a flood of relief just telling someone who was not emotionally involved. He looked at the photos of the ledger and the private agreement on my phone, his expression unreadable. When I was finished, he took off his glasses and polished them slowly with a handkerchief. "Well, Mrs. Collins," he said, his voice even, "your friend Sarah was right. This is highly irregular." "Is it blackmail?" I asked directly. "It has all the hallmarks of a coerced agreement," he said carefully. "The percentage-based payment, the excessive non-disclosure clause, your husband's fear of confrontation. It suggests your husband signed this under duress. The question, as you pointed out, is why? What is the leverage?" "That's what I need to find out," I said, and I need to know what my rights are. Am I just supposed to live with this? Absolutely not, he said firmly. Now that you are married, his financial obligations have an impact on the marital estate. His assets are, to a degree, your assets. His debts and liabilities are also, to a degree, yours. You have a right to full financial disclosure from your spouse. This secrecy is, in itself, a breach of marital trust. Hearing him say that was validating. I was not crazy. I was not being overly sensitive. I was being denied a fundamental right in my marriage. So what do we do? I asked. The first step is to gather more information, he explained. We need to understand the full scope of Diana's finances. We need to find out where this money is going. And we need to find the source of her power over your husband. I would suggest hiring a private investigator. A private investigator. The word sounded so dramatic, so sordid. But I knew he was right. We were past the point of simple conversations. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Let's do it. Good, Mr. Evans said with a nod. I work with one of the best. He's discreet and thorough. I will have him start by doing a full financial workup on Diana. Bank accounts, assets, credit history, the works. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look. He then gave me a piece of advice that stuck with me. In the meantime, he said, you must act as if you know nothing. Continue to be the supportive wife. Do not confront your husband. Do not give Diana any reason to suspect you are on to her. We need the element of surprise on our side. Let them think they are in control. The moment they feel threatened, they will hide things, and our job will become much harder. I left his office feeling a strange mix of fear and empowerment. The path ahead was terrifying, but for the first time since my wedding day, I felt like I was no longer a victim. I was a player in the game now, and I was starting to learn the rules. The following weeks were a masterclass in deception. I smiled, I cooked dinners, I asked Mark about his day. I played the part of the devoted wife so well that I sometimes scared myself. Our relationship seemed to improve on the surface. With the pressure of my questions gone, Mark relaxed. He became more like the man I had fallen in love with. Charming, funny, and affectionate. But it was all a facade. Every night I would lie next to him in bed, my mind racing, wondering what secrets he was holding in the dark. The private investigator, a man named Mr. Jones, was as discreet as promised. He communicated only through Mr. Evans. Every few days, my lawyer would email me a brief, encrypted update. The first update was simple. Diana was living well beyond the means of even the generous payments from Mark. She had a portfolio of investments, a vacation property in Florida, and a taste for European travel. She was not just spending the money, she was growing it. The second update was more interesting. Jones had discovered that Diana had hired a high-profile, aggressive divorce attorney during her split from Mark, but had fired him just before the settlement was signed. She had then finalized the divorce with a much cheaper, less experienced lawyer who had simply rubber-stamped the private agreement. This was a huge red flag. Why would she get rid of a top lawyer unless she had something better on her side? Something that made a legal fight unnecessary. She had a weapon that was more powerful than any lawyer. While the investigation was ongoing, I had to endure another family event. Lily's 7th birthday party. It was held at one of those indoor trampoline parks. The place was chaotic, filled with screaming children and the constant thud of jumping feet. Mark and I had to attend, of course. Diana was there, holding court with a group of other mothers. She looked radiant, dressed in expensive athleisure wear, looking more like a cool older sister than a mother. She greeted me with a chilly smile. "Clara, so glad you could make it," she said, her tone implying I had a choice. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, my own smile just as fake. Mark immediately went into peacekeeper mode, making cheerful small talk and trying to bridge the icy gap between us. I played along for Lily's sake, but I watched Diana all afternoon. I watched the way she talked about Mark to the other mothers. She would say things like, Oh, Mark is so generous. He makes sure Lily and I are always taken care of. It was cleverly worded. She was building her public image as the graceful, well-supported ex-wife, all while subtly reinforcing the narrative that Mark was her personal bank. The breaking point of the day came when it was time for presents. Lily tore through the gifts with gusto. She received a new bike from Mark and me, a gift we had picked out together. She gave us a quick, "Thank you," before moving on to the next one. The final gift was a large, elaborately wrapped box. "This one is from Mommy," Lily squealed with excitement. She tore off the paper to reveal a brand new, top-of-the-line tablet, the most expensive one on the market. It was a completely inappropriate gift for a 7-year-old. The other mothers murmured in surprise. Lily hugged Diana tightly. "Thank you, Mommy. It's the best present ever." Diana shot me a triumphant look over Lily's head. The message was clear. I can buy our daughter's affection, and I use your husband's money to do it. I felt a surge of hot anger. I turned to Mark, my eyes blazing. "Are you seeing this?" I whispered fiercely. He looked deeply uncomfortable. "It's a little much, I agree," he mumbled. "A little much? Mark? She's flaunting it in our faces. She's using your money to one-up us and manipulate Lily," I said, my voice shaking. "Clara, not here," he hissed, glancing around to see if anyone was listening. "We'll talk about it later." But we never did. Later that night, when I tried to bring it up, he shut me down completely. "It's done. There's nothing we can do about it. Complaining about it just makes you look petty." "So I'm supposed to just stand there and smile while she undermines my marriage and my role as a stepmother?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes," he said, his voice cold. "For the sake of peace, yes. That's exactly what you're supposed to do." I went to bed that night feeling a profound sense of despair. He was never going to change. He was too deep in this trap. But then my despair hardened into something else. It was no longer just about justice or fairness. It was about survival. Her actions were not just insulting. They were a threat to my marriage, my home, and my sanity. That night, I stopped seeing this as a problem to be managed. I started seeing it as a war to be won. The next morning, I emailed Mr. Evans. I told him about the party, about the tablet, about Mark's reaction. I wrote, "We need to escalate this. I don't care what it takes or what it costs. Find the leverage. Find the weapon she's using against him. I want it." Mr. Evans's reply was swift and simple. "Understood. I will instruct Jones to deepen his investigation. We will look into the period leading up to the divorce. Something happened then. We will find it." The wait was agonizing. Days turned into a week, then 2. I lived a double life. The smiling wife on the outside, a bundle of nerves on the inside. I jumped every time my phone buzzed with an email notification. I lost weight. I had trouble sleeping. Mark noticed my anxiety but attributed it to stress from my job. He was so wrapped up in his own secret that he could not see mine. During this time, I made a conscious effort to build my own life outside of him. I threw myself into my work, a graphic design business I ran from home. I took on new clients, worked late hours, and started stashing away every dollar I earned into a separate bank account that Mark knew nothing about. It was my escape fund, my war chest. If everything fell apart, I would not be left with nothing. I also started subtly distancing myself from Mark's finances. I used my own credit card for groceries, for gas, for everything. When he offered to pay, I would say, "It's okay. I've got it." He saw it as me being a partner. I saw it as drawing a line, untangling my life from his web of financial secrets. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the email I had been waiting for arrived. The subject line was just one word: urgent. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It was from Mr. Evans. He wanted to meet in person the next day. He wrote, "I believe we have found what we were looking for." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The breakthrough. I felt a surge of both terror and elation. The truth was finally within reach. but I knew that whatever it was, it would change everything. There would be no going back after this. The meeting in Mr. Evans's office felt different from the first one. The air was charged with significance. He did not waste time with pleasantries. He had a single, thin file on his desk in front of him. Mr. Jones has been very thorough, he began, opening the file. He cross-referenced your husband's business records with Diana's personal communications from the year of their divorce. It took some doing, but he found the source of the leverage. He slid a document across the desk toward me. It was a copy of a loan application for Mark's business, dated 5 years ago. The amount was substantial, enough to have saved his company from a period of serious financial trouble. Mark's company was failing, Mr. Evans explained quietly. He had made a series of bad investments and was on the verge of bankruptcy. This loan saved him. I looked at the document. It seemed straightforward enough. I don't understand, I said. What's wrong with getting a loan? The collateral he listed for the loan was inflated, Mr. Evans said, pointing to a specific section. Grossly inflated. The assets were valued at nearly double their actual worth. This is bank fraud, Clara. The words hit me like a physical blow. Fraud. My husband, the successful, respected businessman, was a criminal. But how does Diana fit into this? I asked, my voice weak. Mr. Evans slid another document across the desk. It was a sworn affidavit from a woman who had been Diana's personal assistant at the time. The assistant had quit shortly after the divorce, and Jones had tracked her down. She had been reluctant to talk, but Jones had been persuasive. According to the assistant, Mr. Evans said, Diana discovered the fraud. Mark was in a panic. He was sure he would be caught and face prison time. The company would be ruined. But Diana didn't expose him. She helped him. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. She was the one who helped him create the false documentation to support the inflated asset valuation. She had a background in art history, and she was skilled at forging appraisals for some of the art and antiques the company owned. She was his accomplice. I stared at him, my mind reeling. She helped him commit fraud? Yes, Mr. Evans confirmed. But she was smart. She kept the original unaltered documents, the real appraisals, the drafts of the fraudulent ones. She kept proof of the entire crime. That is her leverage. That is the weapon she has been holding over his head for the past 5 years. Suddenly, everything made sense. The astronomical payments were not just appeasement, they were blackmail. The consulting fee label was a pathetic attempt to disguise it. The private agreement was a contract written by a criminal to ensure her victim kept paying. And Mark's fear, his constant capitulation, was the terror of a man who knew his entire life could be destroyed with a single phone call. So the flower girl's words, I whispered, the realization dawning on me with horrifying clarity. Daddy buys her everything. Mr. Evans finished for me, his voice grim. He was buying her silence. Not you. Her, Diana. She taught her own daughter to say that as a cruel private joke, a way to mock both you and your husband simultaneously. She gets the money and you get the public shame. I felt a wave of nausea. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it was monstrous. Diana had not just secured her financial future, she had engineered a system of perpetual psychological torture for both Mark and me. She had turned their daughter into an instrument of her vengeance. I sat there in silence for a long time, the ugly truth settling around me like a shroud. I looked at Mr. Evans. What are the legal consequences? For him and for her? For him, the statute of limitations on the bank fraud may have passed, depending on the specifics of when the loan was finalized and when the fraud could have been discovered, he explained. It would be a complex and difficult case for prosecutors to pursue now. Not impossible, but difficult. He leaned forward, his expression serious. For her, however, it's a different story. Extortion and blackmail are ongoing crimes. Every payment Mark makes is a new instance of the offense. We have the testimony of the assistant. We have Jones's financial tracking of the money into her accounts. We can prove it. She could face significant prison time. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The weapon Diana had been holding for 5 years was now in my hands. I had the power to destroy her. I also had the power to destroy my husband. I was standing at a crossroads, and either path would lead to devastation. "What do you want to do, Clara?" Mr. Evans asked gently. I thought about Mark, about his lies of omission, the way he had let me suffer to protect his own secret. I thought about Diana, her smug smile, the way she used her own child as a pawn. I thought about Lily, an innocent girl caught in the middle of a toxic war. And I thought about myself. My perfect wedding day ruined, my marriage built on a foundation of fear and deception. My anger was a cold, clear flame, but it was not directed solely at Mark anymore. He was weak and cowardly, but he was also a victim. The true villain was Diana. She was the architect of all this pain. "I don't want to destroy Mark," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I want to destroy her. I want to take away her power. I want her to feel as small and helpless as she has made me feel." Mr. Evans nodded slowly. "There is a way to do that," he said. "We don't have to go to the police, not yet. The threat of criminal prosecution is often more powerful than prosecution itself. We can use this leverage to force a new agreement. An agreement on our terms." A slow smile spread across my face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been handed a sword after being beaten for months. "Tell me the plan," I said. "Tell me exactly what we're going to do." The first step of the plan was the hardest. I had to confront Mark. I could not move forward without him. He was a part of this, and he needed to face the consequences of his choices. I chose to do it at home, in the living room he thought was a sanctuary from his secrets. I waited for him to get home from work. I sat on the couch, the copies of the evidence Mr. Evans had given me laid out on the coffee table. The fraudulent loan application, the assistant's affidavit, a summary of Diana's hidden assets. He walked in, whistling, loosening his tie. "Hey, honey, tough day," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. Then he saw my face and the documents on the table. His whistling stopped. The color drained from his face. He walked slowly over to the table and looked down. He did not need to read the papers. He knew exactly what they were. He sank onto the armchair opposite me, his body slumping as if the strings holding him up had been cut. "Clara," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "It's the truth, isn't it?" He stared at the papers, his shoulders shaking. He covered his face with his hands. A long, ragged sob escaped him. It was a sound of pure despair. I felt a flicker of pity, but I stamped it out. I needed to be strong. "Mark, look at me," I commanded. Slowly, he lowered his hands. His eyes were red, his face a mask of shame and terror. "I know everything," I said quietly. "I know about the loan. I know Diana helped you. I know she's been blackmailing you for 5 years. I know that every time you give her money, you are paying for her silence." He just nodded, unable to speak. "For months," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I have been living in a nightmare. I was humiliated at our wedding. I have been systematically undermined in my own home. I have watched your daughter be turned into a weapon against me. And all that time, you stood by and did nothing. You told me I was being sensitive. You told me to be the bigger person. You lied to me, Mark. Every single day, you lied to me." "I'm sorry," he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "Clara, I am so, so sorry. I was trapped. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared." "Scared of what?" I pressed. "Going to jail? Losing your company? Or just being seen as a failure?" "All of it," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I built this company from nothing. It was my whole life. I made a stupid, terrible mistake. I panicked. And she was there. She offered a way out. I was so grateful at first. I didn't realize I was walking into a cage. And you were willing to let me live in that cage with you, I said, my voice like ice. You were willing to let me be hurt, to let your daughter be poisoned, as long as your secret was safe. You chose the cage over your wife, over your family. This is it. The raw, present feeling takes over. I am no longer just narrating a past event. I am in it. The anger is fresh. The hurt is sharp. I am your wife, I say, my voice rising. My name is on the deed to this house. My life is tied to yours, and you left me outside, in the dark, to be attacked by her. Do you have any idea how that feels? He looks up at me, his face a mess of tears and regret. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Clara. I was just trying to manage it. I thought I could keep it contained. Manage it? I laugh, a bitter, humorless sound. You weren't managing anything. You were feeding a monster, and it was getting bigger and hungrier every day. It was starting to eat me alive. And you just watched. The confession I had craved now felt hollow. His sorrow did not fix the months of loneliness and anxiety. It did not erase the sting of Lily's words. I know I failed you, he says, his voice pleading. I failed you as a husband. I know that. But I can fix this. We can fix this. Tell me what to do, I'll do anything. The pleading in his voice is a new sound. For our entire relationship, he has been the one in control, the one setting the terms, the one asking me to bend. Now, the power has shifted. I am the one holding all the cards. I take a deep breath, the cold resolve returning. It's too late for we, Mark. We don't fix this. I am going to fix this, and you are going to do exactly what I say. He nods frantically. Okay, anything, Clara, just tell me. First, I say, my voice hard and clear, you are going to stop being afraid. The power she has over you is gone. I have it now. Second, you are going to call her. You are going to tell her that you need to have a meeting to discuss the terms of your arrangement. You will tell her your lawyer needs to be present, and you will tell her to bring her lawyer. He flinches. She'll know something is wrong. Good, I say. Let her be scared for a change. The meeting will be at my lawyer's office, tomorrow afternoon. And Mark, I add, my eyes locking onto his. You will not say another word to her. You will let my lawyer do the talking. Do you understand? He swallows hard and nods again. I understand. This is your one and only chance to fix this, I tell him, my voice leaving no room for argument. If you deviate from this plan, if you try to warn her, if you show even a hint of weakness, I will walk out that door. And I will take all of this. I gesture to the papers on the table. With me. And then we can all see what happens. Your choice. He looks from the papers to my face, and for the first time, I think he truly understands the gravity of the situation. He sees that the woman he married, the one who was always so accommodating and understanding, is gone. In her place is someone he does not recognize, someone who will not back down. I'll do it, he says quietly. I'll make the call. He picked up his phone with a trembling hand. I watched him, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I did not know if our marriage could survive this, but I knew with absolute certainty that I could. I had found my own strength, and I was about to use it. The next afternoon, we sat in the sterile conference room at Mr. Evans's office. The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat on one side of the long, polished table with Mr. Evans. Mark sat beside me, pale and silent, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The door opened and Diana swept in. She was dressed in a sharp, expensive-looking business suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She radiated confidence and disdain. Her lawyer, a slick-looking man in a tailored suit, followed her. She surveyed the room, her eyes landing on me with a flicker of annoyance, as if I were a piece of furniture that was out of place. Well, Diana began, not even bothering to sit down. Let's make this quick. I have a spa appointment. Mark, what is this about? If you're having cash flow problems again, you should have just said so. She addressed him directly, completely ignoring me and Mr. Evans. It was a power play, an attempt to establish control from the outset. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but I put a hand on his arm, a silent command. He closed it immediately. Mr. Evans cleared his throat. "Please have a seat, Ms. Vance," he said, his voice calm and polite. "This will likely take longer than you anticipate." Diana shot him an irritated look but sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. Her lawyer sat beside her, opening a briefcase. "My client, Mark Collins, has asked me to preside over this meeting," Mr. Evans began. "We are here to discuss the termination of the private financial agreement between you and him." Diana laughed, a short, sharp bark of a sound. "Termination? That's not possible. We have a contract. A lifelong, binding contract. I assume your lawyer has explained that to you, Mark?" she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We are aware of the agreement," Mr. Evans said smoothly. "We are also aware of the circumstances under which it was signed." He slid a copy of the fraudulent loan application across the table. "I believe you recognize this." Diana's smug expression faltered for the first time. She glanced at the document, then at her lawyer, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Her lawyer picked it up and began to read, his brow furrowing. "That's a business document," Diana said, recovering quickly. "It has nothing to do with me." "On the contrary," Mr. Evans continued, his voice hardening slightly. "We have a sworn statement from your former assistant who is prepared to testify that you not only knew about the fraudulent nature of this application, but actively participated in creating the forged appraisals to support it." He slid the assistant's affidavit across the table. Diana's lawyer read it, his face growing paler by the second. He whispered something to Diana. Her face, for the first time, showed a crack in its perfect mask of composure. She looked genuinely shocked. She looked at me, then at Mark, a furious, confused expression on her face. "This is ridiculous," she spat, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "This is a fabrication. You have no proof." "Oh, but we do," Mr. Evans said, his voice dropping to an almost conversational tone. "We have the original, unaltered appraisals you thought you had destroyed, the ones that show the true value of the assets. And we have a forensic accounting of your finances, Diana. We've traced the payments from Mark, laundered through your consulting fee arrangement into several offshore accounts. We know you've been hiding the money." He let that hang in the air for a moment. "What you call a contract, the district attorney's office would call extortion, blackmail, wire fraud. These are serious felonies, Ms. Vance. Your lifelong agreement could very well be replaced by a 10 to 20-year one, with the state." The silence in the room was absolute. Diana stared at Mr. Evans, her mouth slightly open. The color had completely drained from her face. She looked like a statue. Her lawyer was shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The confident, powerful woman who had walked into the room was gone. In her place was a cornered, frightened criminal. I watched her, feeling a cold, satisfying wave of victory wash over me. This was the moment I had been working toward. This was the moment her power crumbled to dust. What do you want?" Diana finally whispered, her voice barely audible. It was the question of a defeated person. Mr. Evans looked at me. I gave a slight nod. He was the voice, but I was the one in charge. "My clients are prepared to be reasonable," he said, turning his attention back to Diana. "They have no desire to see Lily's mother incarcerated. However, the current situation is untenable. It ends today. Here are our terms." He slid a final document across the table. It was a new agreement, drafted by him. "First," he said, ticking the points off on his fingers, "you will immediately surrender all materials related to the fraudulent loan. Every copy, every draft, every piece of evidence you hold." Second, the private financial agreement is terminated, effective immediately. All future payments will cease. Diana's head snapped up. But the child support. The court-ordered child support will continue, as per the original divorce decree. Not a penny more. Mr. Bureau, Evans stated flatly. Third, you will repatriate 75% of the funds you have hidden in offshore accounts and return them to Mr. Collins. We have a very accurate estimate of the total amount. We will know if you hold anything back. Her lawyer let out a small gasp. Fourth, Mr. Evans continued, his voice relentless. And this is non-negotiable. You will agree to a modification of the custody agreement. Lily will begin immediate therapy with a court-approved child psychologist to deal with the effects of parental alienation. Your visitations will be supervised until such time as the therapist deems you fit to be alone with your daughter again. You will also attend mandatory co-parenting counseling. With Clara. Diana's eyes flew to mine, filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. The idea of being in counseling with me, of acknowledging me as a parental figure in her daughter's life, was clearly the most painful blow of all. You can't do that, she hissed. We can, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was quiet but steady. We can do that. Or Mr. Evans can make a phone call. The choice is yours, Diana. You can either be a mother to Lily, under our terms, or you can explain to her from behind a glass partition why you won't be seeing her for a very long time. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She was trapped. She looked at her lawyer for help, but he just gave a slight shake of his head. He knew they had lost. The fight went out of her. She slumped in her chair, her face a mask of defeat. The powerful suit she wore now seemed to hang off her, too big for her diminished form. Fine, she spat out, the word tasting like acid in her mouth. Fine. You'll sign the agreement? Mr. Evans asked. She just nodded, not looking at anyone. Excellent, Mr. Evans said, as if concluding a simple business transaction. He pushed the papers and a pen toward her. Sign here and here, an initial at the bottom of each page. With a trembling hand, Diana signed away her power, her wealth, and her control. She signed away the weapon she had used to terrorize my husband for 5 years. When she was done, she stood up, her movements stiff and jerky. She didn't look at any of us. She just turned and walked out of the room, her lawyer scurrying behind her. The door clicked shut, leaving the three of us in silence. Mark let out a long, shuddering breath. The breath of a man who had been holding it for 5 years. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and fear. He was free, but he knew he owed his freedom entirely to me. I just nodded at him, a cool, final acknowledgement. The battle was over, but the war for my marriage had just entered a new, uncertain phase. I had won, but I wasn't sure yet what the victory had cost me. The aftermath was quiet and swift. Diana complied with every term of the agreement. Her lawyer delivered a locked briefcase to Mr. Evans's office the next day. It contained all the evidence of Mark's fraud. Mr. Evans had it incinerated. The large sums of money began to flow back from various corners of the globe into a trust account Mr. Evans had set up. The financial bleeding that had been draining Mark for years had stopped. Life at home changed dramatically. The tension that had been a constant undercurrent in our house evaporated. Mark walked around with a lightness I hadn't seen in him since we were first dating. He was more present, more engaged. The shadow that had been hanging over him was gone. He tried to thank me, multiple times. Clara, I don't know what to say. You saved me. You saved everything. He said one evening, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't do it for you, Mark. I replied coolly, my voice leaving no room for sentimentality. I did it for me. I did it because I refused to live in the prison you and she had built. You need to understand that. My words stung him. I could see it in his eyes. But it was the truth. My actions were born of self-preservation, not forgiveness. Forgiveness was something he would have to earn, and I wasn't sure he could. The trust between us had been shattered. I looked at him now and saw not just the man I loved, but the man who had been willing to sacrifice my happiness for his secrets. The most significant change was with Lily. She started therapy with a wonderful patient-child psychologist named Dr. Anya Sharma. Diana's visits became supervised, held for an hour twice a week in a sterile room at a family services center. Diana hated it. I knew from the brief, clipped reports from the supervisor that she was often sullen and uncooperative. Lily, on the other hand, began to slowly open up. In her sessions, she started to untangle the confusing messages her mother had fed her for years. She learned to express her own feelings, not just echo Diana's. One Saturday morning, a few months after the confrontation, Lily and I were in the garden, planting flowers. It was something I had tried to do with her before, with little success. But today, she was engaged, her little hands covered in dirt, a smile on her face. Out of the blue, she looked up at me and said, "Mommy is sad a lot now." I paused, my trowel hovering over the soil. I chose my words carefully. I would not badmouth her mother no matter how much I despised her. That would make me no better than Diana. "I'm sorry to hear that, sweetie," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups have to deal with difficult things." "She says she misses her money," Lily said, her voice small. My heart ached for her. A child should be worried about scraped knees and monsters under the bed, not her mother's financial woes. "Well," I said, turning back to the flowers. "Money doesn't make people happy, Lily. Doing the right thing makes people happy. And loving the people around you, that's what's important." She seemed to consider this for a moment, then she pointed to a bright yellow tulip. "That one is my favorite. It's sunny," she said. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. It was a small step, but it felt like a giant leap. The poison was slowly being drawn out. Mark and I also started counseling, both together and separately. Our sessions were difficult. I had to lay out all my hurt and anger, all the times I had felt alone and betrayed. He had to confront his own cowardice and the choices he had made. It was a painful, ugly process. There were days I was sure we would not make it. But he did the work. He listened. He took responsibility without making excuses. He admitted his fear had made him a bad husband. He slowly started to rebuild the trust he had broken, brick by painful brick. He became radically transparent, showing me every bank statement, every business decision, every email from his office. He was trying to prove he had no more secrets. I had a final, brief fallout conversation with my sister-in-law, Mark's sister, Karen. We met for lunch, and I gave her a heavily sanitized version of events. I just said that Mark and I had discovered Diana was mishandling the money he was giving her, and we had to take legal steps to protect Lily's interests. Karen listened, her expression thoughtful. "I'm not surprised," she said quietly. "I never liked her. There was always something grasping about her. And Mark? He always let her walk all over him, even when they were married. I'm glad you stood up to her. He needed someone to do that." It was a small moment of validation from his side of the family, and it meant more than she knew. About 6 months after the meeting in Mr. Evans's office, Mark, Lily, and I were in a furniture store. The money that had been returned from Diana was now in a trust for Lily's future education, but we had decided to use a small portion of our own joint savings to finally replace some of the old, tired furniture in our house. It was a symbolic act, a way of making the house truly ours, free from the ghosts of the past. We were looking at sofas when Lily wandered off. We found her in the lighting section, staring up at a whimsical lamp shaped like a crescent moon. "Can we get that?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's pretty." Mark opened his mouth to say yes immediately, his old habit of buying things to make people happy dying hard. But he stopped himself. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. He was deferring. He was asking for my input. It was a small gesture, but it was everything. I smiled and knelt down to Lily's level. "It is very pretty," I said. "Let's see if it's in our budget. We decide on these things together." Lily didn't pout or argue. She just nodded. Okay, she said simply. We checked the price tag. It was reasonable. We added the moon lamp to our list. As we walked toward the checkout counter, with Lily holding my hand and Mark's hand resting on my shoulder, I felt a sense of peace that I had not felt since before my wedding. The ugly words that had started this whole nightmare, "Daddy buys her everything," had finally lost their power. They were just a bad memory, a reminder of a battle I had fought and won. Now, we bought things together. We built a life together. And Diana, stripped of her ill-gotten wealth and her power, was left with nothing but her own bitterness. She had finally learned what it felt like to be small, to be powerless. She had learned what it felt like to have nothing to hold over anyone. And that was the most satisfying comeuppance of all. My life was no longer defined by her cruelty, but by my own strength. I had taken back my happiness, and I was never going to let it go again.